Hey guys, what's up? Public here, back with another video, and today kind of an interesting one. I'm going to give you the top 5 items in Season 4 for Shadow Priest. So we don't have all the details about the season yet, but we can kind of speculate that, the item level is going to be raised up. We're going to get everything accessed from all the previous raids of Dragonflight, and then all of the Dragonflight dungeons are also contributing to that pool. So I'm kind of doing this in the grounds of we are probably going to get something similar to the Dinar vendor that we had in Shadowlands, where over the course of the first couple weeks of the season, you'll get a token where you can effectively buy whatever item you want from the raid. So I'm kind of taking that and extracting it out and being like, okay, what would be the kind of top items as a Shadow Priest you would consider going for? I'm giving 5 here because I don't know how many they're going to let us pick. And I think you also, generally speaking, you'll get at least one of these, and then you kind of use your tokens to fill in the gaps. So let's get started. Okay, so as we dive into the list, I do kind of want to preface this with I have been busy running Sims, as I typically do. So I've kind of just been cooking in the background. I've scaled up a gear set up to eye level 500. It's probably lowballing it a little bit. It's probably going to be like 502 or something. But just kind of raised everything up to 500. And then I activated the Season 2 set bonus again. I didn't touch anything else about the spec, left everything else intact, and left the existing set bonus in, didn't tweak the set bonus, which I think based on the votes, it's probably what we're going to get. Then I'd spent a couple days kind of going through talents and kind of picking out the top talent builds for the season. And then from there, I started looking at, okay, let's look at trinkets and special items and cantrip items that would probably appear on the vendor. So starting out at number 5 is going to be the Voice of the Silent Star cloak. So this one is kind of controversial, which is why it's number 5. This is the cloak that does not have stamina and steals secondary stats from other players in your raid and your group. Honestly, I think it's just a fun cloak. I'm not sure if it's going to be the best choice for everyone because it does steal secondaries from your group, maybe not what you're looking for. But if you are just trying to parse and do big numbers, this thing is great. So that's why it's my number 5 pick. Again, not sure how popular it will be, but we'll kind of see as things go on. Now, moving on to number 4, this is the first trinket of the list, which is Belor'relos the Suncaller. Now, there is a chance that going into Season 4, they do some trinket tuning, which is possible. I think if they do, Belor'relos is probably on the top of the list to get some kind of changes or tweaks. But in the current state, this is a pretty easy trinket to add on this list. It is one of our best in slot, if not best in slot right now for pure single target and AoE. One of the main reasons why it's not higher on this list is just because it does have a pretty hefty self-damage component. So if you're trying to push content, that can kind of be a negative of this, similar to Voice of the Silent Star. But I don't think you could go wrong selecting this trinket for sure. Okay, on to number 3. This is the next trinket on the list, which is Neltharion's Call to Suffering. So this is the class trinket from Aberrus. I think a lot of people will remember this was a kind of a cool visual trinket that also could RNG swing out some pretty high damage. Again, we're not totally sure what the item level is going to look like. One of the reasons why this trinket in particular was so strong was because it did come with a higher item level as well compared to most trinkets of the raid, which should kind of help out its budget. So I'm not seeing this necessarily dominate the trinket charts as we saw in previous seasons, but it's still doing pretty well, pretty competitive, especially if you are pairing it with some other unused trinket. Maybe not like double passive situation, but we'll see. I think it's still pretty strong. Okay, and moving on to number 2, this is the last trinket of the list, which is Whispering Incarnate Icon. So this was basically everyone's best in slot from Season 1, and it's for sure coming back in a really huge way. I'm seeing this trinket just dominate everything. The important thing about this, and I think one of the reasons why it's not necessarily number 1, is because it does require having a healer and a tank to really get the full value out of this trinket. But I will note, even if it's just other DPS running the trinket, it's still our best in slot trinket. So that's how strong it is, where having a healer and or a tank with it is just kind of gravy at that point. It's still something you're going to want. This is probably going to be a really great purchase for any DPS class, and then the healers and tanks are just be really sad if they don't necessarily want it. I think tanks in particular, healers might still take it, but we'll see. So that is my second pick for Season 4. All right, and the number 1 slot is Vakash the Shadowed Inferno. Now, there's a lot of caveats with this one because I am kind of making some assumptions with this. But picking out a weapon that is full stats and has an extra cantrip effect it's just clearly your best in slot weapon, assuming equal item level and things like that. Now, where things get fuzzy is I don't exactly know what all they're going to bring back for Season 4, which could change what's actually suggested here. Specifically, the question is, are they going to allow Irodal the Earth's Master back into the cantrip vendor? I doubt it, just because it's unlikely that the Mega Dungeon will even be in the dungeon pool. If it was, I would for sure say Irodal is up here, but since we may not have that if we're going off of Shadowlands, Vakash is clearly the next best weapon that we have, which is why I'll put it at the number 1 slot of items to look at for Season 4. Now, before I move off of Vakash, the other thing I have to mention is this one's kind of weird because it is just a one-handed weapon, so it does kind of mean you need to have some offhand to make it, clearly our best in slot option from a weapon standpoint. So depending on your drops, it might be a fuzzy question, kind of depending on what you're looking for. So you definitely got to keep that in mind. All right, the last thing I want to show up is just a couple honorable mentions, just because I know this list is kind of just a little dependent on how the season folds out. The two I'll have on this list, the first one is Dreambinder. So this is kind of the other cantrip weapon from the most recent raid in Season 3. The reason why it's honorable mention, because again, just kind of depends on if you're going to pick up Vakash. If you don't like the one-hander, especially the self-damaging component, you can definitely see this being the easy pickup, especially if it's at equal item level to Vakash. It's actually pretty close, although not strictly best in slot. That being said, also in AoE, you could somewhat favor Dreambinder as like a better damage pattern. Just kind of depends on the fight, I think, what you're looking for. So threw that up on this list as well. And the last one is Ominous Chromatic Essence. This is the trinket from Season 2. The reason why this is an honorable mention, I think it's actually putting out okay sim numbers. The problem here is that you kind of have the issue of, similar to Whispering Incarnate Icon, is you just need other people with the trinket. Specifically, other people with the trinket and tuned to all of the different secondaries, which was already a pain in Season 2 to get everyone and aligned on using it. And I think because just throughput-wise, it's not stellar, it's not best in slot, especially compared to Whispering Incarnate Icon, I think you're not going to see as many people go for it. If you do happen to be at a raid group or a dungeon group that is utilizing this to the top and to the max, I could see maybe knocking this up and putting it at slot number 3 and pairing it with Whispering Incarnate Icon, which is a for sure lock for us. Just kind of depends on how the season goes for you and what you're thinking about. So that is my list of my top 5 for items and cantrip items for Season 4. Let me know if I missed anything, or if you kind of think that something should be called out here. This is kind of what I was just thinking about, just based on all of the raid items from what they did similar to Shadowlands. So we'll see what happens. And of course, this is purely speculative. When Season 4 actually comes out and is announced, I'll have an official guide of what I would suggest buying. This is what I think so far. Let me know what you guys think, and we'll see you in the next one.